In our last episode, we watched Ireland transformed into England's testing ground for empire, plantations, rebellions, and a legacy of bitterness. But while Ireland smouldered, England's attention turned outward again, for the prize was no longer just land, it was trade. Spices, sugar, tobacco, timber, control the seas, and you controlled the money. Enter the Navigation Acts, a set of laws that turned commerce into combat. And soon, England found itself locked in furious naval wars with the Dutch Wars that would decide who ruled the waves. This isn't just trade policy, this is capitalism with cannon fire. The 1600s were a turbulent century. Civil wars tore England apart, kings lost their heads, parliaments rose and fell. But amid the chaos, one thing became clear: trade was power. The Dutch Republic, small but mighty, had turned itself into the warehouse of the world. Amsterdam's ports bustled with ships from Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Dutch merchants controlled spices, sugar, textiles, even finance. England still playing catch-up, but catching up was no longer enough. England wanted dominance. And so, in the mid-1600s, the Navigation Acts were passed. Their purpose, simple: to make sure trade enriched England and only England. The first Navigation Act of 1651 was Oliver Cromwell's brainchild. It declared that only English ships, or ships from the producing country itself, could bring goods into England. That meant no more Dutch middlemen skimming profits, no more Amsterdam warehouses controlling English markets. Later acts went further. Colonial goods could only be exported on English ships. Colonies could only trade with England. Tariffs punished foreign merchants. It was protectionism with a swagger. As one English pamphleteer wrote, "The wealth of the nation lies in keeping our trade in our own bottoms." And yes, they really did mean ships. The acts delighted English shipbuilders and merchants. They enraged the Dutch, and soon this paper war would spill onto the seas. In 1652, the inevitable happened. An English fleet under Admiral Robert Blake confronted a Dutch convoy off Dover. A shot was fired, and suddenly the two greatest naval powers in Europe were at war. The Dutch, led by the legendary Admiral Martin Tromp, were masters of seamanship. The English, though less experienced, were aggressive and well-armed. For 2 years, the North Sea and English Channel became killing grounds. Hundreds of ships clashed in sprawling battles: Portland, the Gabbard, Scheveningen. In the end, English firepower gave them the edge. The Dutch agreed to honor the Navigation Acts. England had bloodied its rival, but the rivalry was far from over. When Charles II was restored to the throne in 1660, he brought charm, mistresses, and war. The Navigation Acts were renewed, trade restrictions tightened, and once again the Dutch bristled. The Second Anglo-Dutch War, 1665–1667, was fought across seas from Africa to North America. The English scored early victories, even capturing the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam, which they politely renamed New York. But the Dutch weren't finished. In 1667, Admiral Michiel de Ruyter sailed boldly up the River Medway, burning and capturing English ships at anchor. It was one of the most humiliating defeats in English naval history. As Samuel Pepys, the diarist, recorded, "All our hearts broke, and the nation is undone." England had overreached. Round 2 went to the Dutch. In the 1670s, England allied with France against the Dutch. Once again, fleets clashed. Battles raged off Texel, Solebay, and the Channel. But the Dutch, under de Ruyter, fought like lions. Time and again, they outmaneuvered their enemies. England grew weary of the fight. Parliament grumbled about costs. Merchants grumbled about disrupted trade. And so, peace was signed. The Dutch Republic had survived, battered, but still afloat. Yet cracks were showing. England was learning, adapting, building. And the Dutch, stretched thin, could only hold the line for so long. These wars weren't just about who flew the biggest flag at sea. They were about who controlled the arteries of global trade. The Navigation Acts forced English colonies to trade only with England. That meant sugar from the Caribbean, tobacco from Virginia, and timber from New England poured into English ports. Shipbuilding boomed, the Royal Navy expanded, a culture of maritime power was taking root. As one English commentator boasted, "Trade is the sinews of war, and the war the protector of trade." In other words, money and muscle were now working hand in hand. England was learning the art of empire. The Anglo-Dutch Wars left scars, but also lessons. England had flexed its naval muscles and discovered the power of trade laws backed by warships. The Dutch had fought valiantly, but the tide of history was shifting. England was rising, and soon it would seize its chance to dominate. And what fueled this rising power? Sugar. In the next episode, we sail to the Caribbean, to Jamaica, Barbados, and beyond, to a world of plantations, fortunes, and unimaginable human suffering. The Caribbean sugar colonies, sweet profits, bitter cost. If you liked the clash of cannons and commerce, subscribe and join us for episode 8, where the empire's hunger for sugar reshapes the Caribbean and enslaves millions.